Guys, welcome back to K9TV. This evening's episode is all about what I call trust fund babies. So we're going to have a little bit of fun with that. So before we get into it, I just want to say a huge thank you for everyone that has been showing so much support and sending through comments and feedbacks and sending me through messages saying that they're really enjoying the content. So really appreciate that. Looking forward to catching up with everyone at our upcoming recall workshop also. Guys, as I wait for you guys to start tuning in, trust fund babies, the reason I call, or the reason I've decided to talk about having dogs as trust fund babies is it's one of the most common type behavioral things that I see with our beautiful domestic dogs. So obviously, particularly if you're tuning in here this evening, you have a care factor and a great love for your dogs. So I'm blessed enough to be invited into people's homes to help them with their dog's behaviour, and I quite often get asked, what kind of things can we do to help our dogs out and whatnot. So I've called this evening trust fund babies, and more to the point, how do we stop our dogs from being a trust fund baby? So I can see a couple of you are joining in. Thank you very much, guys. I'd love to know where you're joining us from. So do me a favour. Thank you for sending some little love hearts and thumbs up across the screen. I'd love to know where it is that you're tuning in from, because I'm getting comments from not only locally, so I'm currently based in Melbourne, but I'm also getting feedback from a lot of different places. So I'd love to hear where you're joining me from this evening. If you could put your comments down below. This evening, Brent is off doing a puppy school reunion, so he normally would be sitting there and giving the live feedback, comments, etc., while I'm having a bit of a chin wag here. So this evening it's just going to be me, so I'll do my best to stay on top of everything. And for those people that will be joining us from puppy school, a big hello to you guys also. Guys, we might just get straight into it. So hopefully your comments will be popping up soon. I can see where you're joining me from, so just your city or your town, wherever you're from. Trust fund babies. So getting straight into the nitty gritty of it, guys. As I said, I'm lucky enough to be welcomed into people's homes and help them with their dogs and their behaviour and whatnot. One of the things that I quite often see is, as much as we all love our dogs, and I must say I was also guilty of having a trust fund dog also. Trust fund dogs are basically where they get everything pretty much for minimal effort. So if you look through the decades, you look at particular perhaps socialites and that type of thing, where perhaps they've been born into money, they may not particularly have a strong or a good work ethic. So that's basically what I'm going to be going through and hopefully raising our dog's work ethic, because we all know how smart our dogs are. We are only just starting to scratch the tip of the iceberg when it comes to how super intelligent our dogs are and what they're actually capable of doing. They've been used for working purposes for centuries, and regardless whether you have a traditional working breed or perhaps you have one of the more designer breeds that we start to see now, so they're the most common ones that I certainly see, the ones that are crossed with poodles. So I nickname them oodles. So you can get doodles, groodles, labradoodles, you name it. There's lots and lots of oodles of doodles I sit there and nickname. Regardless of what it is, when you start to look at them, every dog needs to have a purpose and likes to have something that makes them feel like, there's a meaning to their life, if you would. So Alicia, thanks for joining in, darling. Nowhere fun, just Doncaster. Doncaster is a nice place, my friends. So welcome. Thank you for tuning in. So when it comes to, how can we get, if we've raised our dogs on a bit of a trust fund, or what does a trust fund look like? So I quite often sit there and suggest to people, if you've got a dog and let's say it's feeding time, so whether you're about to give them dinner for this evening, and traditionally all you ever do is get your dog to sit for their meal. So you get their food bowl and you waddle on over, or maybe the dog comes to you, you ask your dog to sit, then you put the food bowl down, regardless of whether you give them a release command or a eat cue or whatnot. But you put the food down, you let them know it's okay to eat, and then their meal's served. if we were to look at that from our point of view, imagine if we were lucky enough to come home from, just sit at the table, I should say, not even come home from work. But if we just sat at the table and then voila, our meal was there, I would start to sit there and say to our, in relation to our dog, perhaps that's, perhaps we could get a little bit more from them. Perhaps we're spoiling them a little bit. Can we get more than just a sit? If you're working on some obedience, I know a lot of people might get their dogs to say, shake hands or high five. I have written a blog post on that from my personal viewpoint in regards to getting dogs to shake hands and high five. It's a very cool thing, but, just please understand what it is that you may be teaching your dog to do. I know people that get their dogs to sit, spin, move back. There's lots of different things that we can start to get our dogs to do. So perhaps have a look at, the repertoire, the routine that you go through when it comes to feeding your dog. Is it just the same thing over and over and over again? Sit, okay, you can now eat. Or can you sit there and kind of spice it up that little bit? And I know that our dogs certainly. So for those of you that certainly enjoy training with your dogs and teaching them new skills, you'll certainly appreciate and understand how much your dogs love that type of behavior and that ability to be able to impress you and please you. There's some of the things that I suggest that we start doing with our dogs and take them off the trust fund and just let them really thrive on life. So I've got a list down here of some of the things that I like to do with dogs. One of the most simple ones is scatter feeding. So if you think of the way perhaps visually if you imagine what it's like to feed free-range chickens, so you kind of just scatter their food out, that can be a great way to get your dogs to start to, use their sense of smell. Now, of course, humans as a species, we are very visually orientated. Our dogs use their olfactory system, which is basically using their sense of smell to explore their world. I quite often have a little bit of a giggle with my clients and I sit there and I say that we as people can go to any, hotel throughout the world, so to speak, and we can visually identify, perhaps what the bathroom's going to look like. So we can walk in and go, oh yeah, that's the shower, that's the bath, and that's the bath, or the loo, if you would, the toilet. For our dogs, anywhere that our dogs go for a walk, they're going to identify a bathroom through their sense of smell. So they're not particularly looking for a porcelain seat or anything along those lines. So as you can imagine, quite the opposite of what we want. We never want to smell a bathroom or be able to identify where a bathroom is through our sense of smell. Because that would be a little bit off-putting. But for our dogs, that's why when they go for a walk, they'll sit there and sniff a tree or a post and go, oh, I get it, everybody else has peed here, so this is why I pee. Thanks for the thumbs up, guys. That's really cool. Hi, Karen. Thanks for joining us. For those that have just joined in, please pop down just below where you're joining me from. It'd be great to know where everyone's coming from. We're getting some great feedback because we not only put these feeds obviously live here on Facebook this evening, but they do get posted up on YouTube as well. So, back to where our dogs, or should I say how our dogs kind of explore their environment. It's very much through their olfactory system, being their nose. So, have you thought about perhaps, before you go to work, or if you've got kids at home, you can certainly get the kids to spread your dog's, food out throughout the backyard. Now, of course, if you've got multiple dogs in your household, you need to be aware whether there's ever any food guarding issues or whether they may fight over food. So please take that into consideration and adjust any of my recommendations accordingly. But, there is nothing wrong with, sitting there and saying to the kids, okay, so if your dogs are getting, say, traditional dry kibble or, dog biscuits, they can just walk out the back. And if they're getting, say, 1 cup or 2 cups, give the little cup of food to your kids and say, okay, go and spread it out in the backyard. And that's like a little treasure hunt for your dogs. So the dogs have an absolute ball using their innate sense of smell to explore. And as they're going along and exploring, they can find their treats as they go. I do sit there and kind of use the analogy of this is a bit like a puzzle. Now, I don't know many people that do 10,000 piece puzzles. The main reason being is they just take a little bit too long for most people's patience. So in regards to that, don't spread the food too far out. If it's spread too broadly, it may be a little bit too difficult for your dog to achieve and have success to start off with. Smaller puzzle, easier to achieve, greater success. Then as your dog starts to become an absolute expert at putting this scatter feeding together, that's when the kids can start to really spread the food out for your dogs to go and hunt around. So it is naturally engaging your dog's sense of smell. Regardless of the breed, it doesn't bother me whether they're a little pug or a traditional scent hound by any means. They can all do a great job. Set your dog up for success. One of the other things for your kids, if they know like the old stories of, say, Hansel and Gretel or anything along those lines, any treasure hunt, you can certainly use your imagination and capture that for your kids as well. So get your kids to set up a treasure hunt for the dogs, and then you can sit back and watch this dog, do spirals or zigzags across the backyard as they go to find out, where all their treats are. Depending on the age of your kids, you may want to perhaps have your dog inside while your little ones are out, setting the treasure hunt up. Certainly be there, supervise. We can never stress that enough. Any canine professional will always sit there and say that dogs and kids need to be supervised when they're together. But, you can always sit there and suggest to your kids if they're going to do a bit of a treasure hunt, perhaps every little step that they take, they can put another piece of food down. And then you guys can just sit back and maybe enjoy your breakfast as you watch your dog to snuffleupagus, as I call it, around and enjoy all their food. If you're flat out, even if you're a professional and you don't have kids around, it's a great fun thing for your dog to do whilst you're at work. Opposed to them just getting all their food from a food bowl. They scoff it all up in about 30 seconds. This certainly is going to help their digestion of their food, so obviously they're going to be gaining more nutrients from it. But it's a great thing, good fun. Even if your kids are, getting ready for school, there is no excuses, guys. It only takes about 2 minutes to go out there and spread the food around, so hopefully that works. That's the one that I call scatter feeding. Bear with me, guys. I've just seen some comments come up here. What do you do? This is Alicia. What do you do when we have our two dogs being Zuka and Zia and try to manage one so the other doesn't eat, so they don't eat each other? That's a really good point. We're very lucky that our two dogs have very much mutual respect for each other. That being said, I don't want to put my dogs under any pressure or stress. We're blessed enough to be able to separate our backyards, and the majority of times, if I'm doing scatter feeding with Zuka, Brent might be doing something with Zia, and or vice versa. We don't kind of do a free-for-all feed, if that makes any sense. I know just this evening, as I was saying earlier, Brent's at puppy school. He does have Zia. I'm here with Zuka, and we were just down the back earlier this evening, and we're out with our chickens, and Zuka was, running around trying to find the food a little bit as well, which is a really cool thing. So I always set my dogs up for success. I don't want them to feel pressure or stress from each other or have that competition from food. So hopefully that makes sense. But we do, personally, we choose to separate the two. Some people sit there and they say they don't have a problem in the world having food around their dogs. I've never had a problem with it, but I personally just choose to kind of play that role a little bit separate and individual for my dogs. Hey, Del, nice to have you join me. Guys, Dallas is in Canberra. She's an awesome chick. Love the treasure hunt, especially if you put it around the obstacles, make them go under or over. Absolutely, definitely. One of the things, guys, that I do have mentioned on my list is what I call my DIY dog toy. I will pop a link to the video below here this evening once we finished up. Getting our dogs, so no doubt you've all been aware and you've all seen the different food toys you can buy. The Kong brand, the Kong toys, normally traditionally are red. They're quite popular. Certainly have had great success. I know there are a few people in the world, to put my hand up, and I know that my dogs, there's no such thing as a Kong safe, or my dogs are not Kong proof, if you would. They will certainly enjoy them, but they don't last very long. So I've made up just my own little DIY dog toy made out of PVC. As I said, I'll pop the link down below. But making it a bit of an obstacle, making it a treasure hunt, making it a game. If you think of it a bit like a piñata, so the piñata are the traditional, I believe they're Mexican toys, where you would hide candy in, say, paper mache type thing. So the kids have got to work hard. You know, they've got to hit the piñata in order to get their treats. Very similar kind of concept for our dogs, where you can get them to you know, play and work for their food. So again, opposed to just putting a food bowl in front of them where they just scoff it all up, certainly making them work for it. This all goes towards having your dog learn that, you know, they're capable of doing more than just having what I nickname the gravitational butt, which is just, hey, if I sit down, the world will happen for me. If I sit, you'll feed me. If I sit, you'll open the door. If I sit, everything will happen. It's very polite to have a dog sit, but as I said, I think we're kind of, you know, cutting the dogs a wee bit short. They're super, super smart, and we can certainly be requesting a truckload more for them. Yeah, so as I said, food toys, I've also used an Art Deco brick. When I post my DIY video for you guys to watch, you'll notice in the background there's an Art Deco brick, so like an old school house brick, and I've certainly put food in that for my dogs to have to work to get out. It's all about what we call environmental enrichment. And the more environmental enrichment that we give our dogs, certainly, you know, the better it is for them. So basically, if you look at, for those that may not be familiar with the term of environmental enrichment, it's very similar to what we would be doing in a kindergarten or a primary school for our children. You want to make the environment fun. You don't want to have to always be dependent on, or so you don't want your children to always be dependent on you for entertainment. So, you know, for children, not for dogs, let's clarify that. It may be something like your old school Lego, or, you know, crayons or painting, Play-Doh, that type of thing. So what we want to be able to do is create environmental enrichment for our dogs. So you'll see that not only happening in our sanctuaries, our zoos, there are some amazing shelters around that, you know, introduce environmental enrichment. So it's a really, really good thing. Diamond, I've just seen your bottom one, which is I've just answered it, but you said, yeah, you find puzzle games work too. Oh, yes. So one of the puzzle games that I have seen quite a lot of is where you get like a cupcake tin that you'd normally put in the oven, and then without putting it in the oven, just to clarify, and you can put tennis balls over it. Absolutely. I've seen them work very well, particularly with our gentle dogs. The tricky thing can be the smarter your dog is, and what I mean by that, not necessarily saying that people have, you know, a smarter dog or a dumb dog, but the more your dog learns to problem solve, the more efficient they become, therefore the smarter they become, if you would. So the smarter your dog is, or the more wired they are to learn, one of the things that I find, if I was to give Zuka that cupcake tin with all the tennis balls in, he just looks at it and goes, really? He picks it up, turns it upside down, so obviously all the tennis ball falls out, and as do the food. I find that he does that also. There's a toy out called the Kong Wobbler. I thought it was a great concept to start off with. Certainly is fantastic for certain dogs. With Zuka, though, he just picked it up, shook all the treats out, put the toy down. He's got, yeah, whatever. So, absolutely, definitely, whatever's going to work for your dogs. If you've got a gentle dog that's going to, you know, gently nuzzle or whatnot, absolutely, those types of things can be fantastic. One of the other things that I've got listed down here is what I call food fetch. So food fetch is another great one that you can introduce and supervise and help your kids out to play with your dog. So exactly the same as how you would play fetch with the ball. You'd throw the ball, the dog obviously, generally speaking, would run off, get the ball, and hopefully bring it back. Food fetch, I see as it's a win-win situation. I see a lot of children that are a little bit hesitant because nothing through love, but the dogs jump up on the kids. So the kids are a little bit hesitant, and understandably so, of going out into the backyard. Remember, if you're only 3 foot tall and your dog's jumping up on your kids, that can be quite intimidating. So again, guys, please supervise, and this is to your own judgment and discretion when it comes to your kids. Make sure you keep them safe. But one of the things that I absolutely love doing is sitting there, and if we can get our kids and they've got some food and they can throw a piece of food, which means the dog's going to head away from your kids, go and eat the food, naturally they're going to turn around and come back. But if you've ever seen a ball-obsessed dog, the minute you pick that ball up, they're already heading out. They're like, throw it, as they're running away. So I see multiple ripple effects that are all beneficial. First of all, it can help teach our dogs that when there's little kids around, just create a little bit of space, because the reward actually comes from being away, just that snippet. So giving our kids a little bit more personal space keeps the dogs absolutely entertained. So, of course, they're not only getting their nutritional value, and I'll go through that as well, guys, but they're getting their, nutritional value. They're getting that snippet of exercise, and it's great family time. So again, setting it up so your kids can throw the treat, the dog runs out, turns around, comes back, not necessarily, right into your kid's personal space. This is where you're going to have to supervise depending on what your dog's behavior is like, and how confident you are. And then you can throw another piece. For adults here, I find this is such a great game to teach engagement, because it teaches your dog that, hey, if you want to gain any more reward, you must turn around and look at me too. So one of the things that I quite often sit there and say when I'm working with people is, if they say, my dog's not paying me attention, how do I get my dog to look at you? And of course, when we're out and about, there's so many different distractions. It can be certainly difficult to get your dogs to look at you to start off with. But the analogy I use, if I was going to throw a ball for you and I needed or wanted you to catch it, in order for you to catch the ball, you're going to have to be paying attention toward me. So I throw the ball, you have to look so you can catch it, and then vice versa. In order for me to catch the ball back, I need to be paying attention so now I can catch it. So I'll sit there and I'll be throwing food for the dog. And yes, whilst I'll be tossing it, if your dog's on lead, close enough that they can actually, just step out and grab it, they'll come back, refocus on me, so I'll toss another little piece of food as well. So it works really well in group classes when your dogs are distracted, works well when you're out on a walk, works really well if you're in your backyard with your dog. And, TV training is another thing that I really, recommend as well, guys. We all kind of have time-poor lives nowadays, so there is no reason why, if your dogs are inside, if you're sitting on the couch, toss a treat, your dog can go and get it and come back. So it's all about thinking outside of the box instead of putting their food in their food bowl and saying, there you go, madame, you may now eat. If you're sitting there and your dog's getting dry kibble, dry biscuits, you can just toss one piece at a time. They'll run off and get it, come back, you toss another one. And that it cannot get, honestly, any more simple than that. So hopefully that makes sense for you guys. When we talk about tossing treats, ideally, if you can include those treats as part of their nutritional value. So our dogs, obviously, it's our obligation, it's our moral duty and care to be feeding our dogs. So if you can be using if you're using dry kibble, when you're feeding them, whatever it is, as much as possible, not to be adding those extra sneaky bits in, because we need to make sure that our dogs remain a healthy weight for their longevity, for their hips and their joints. But, there's no reason why you can't just think outside of the box and feed them in a more creative way. It makes life so much more fun for them. And also, if our dogs are interactive throughout their lives, it certainly decreases the amount of destructive type behaviors as well. All right, guys, I'm just going to have a read through here. Alicia, so the cupcake tin is just a starting point to teach dogs to problem solve. Yeah, it is a starting point, but some dogs it's going to be, that will be their most favorite game. I could go very much with a cliche, and if you've got a very gentle, soft spoken kind of cavalier as an example, it may work really, really well. If you had a little teacup sized dog, so let's say around the type size of a Chihuahua, we have one that comes down to training with us called Bandit. That's a pretty big obstacle for them to move. Again, Zuka's 50 kilos, so to pick up a cupcake tin and a tennis ball, that's nothing. So it's about finding, again, it's the analogy that I use. Find the shoe that's going to fit your dog. Make sure it's comfortable and they like wearing it as well. So it certainly is a great place to start, but, make sure it doesn't mean that if your dog really enjoys it and doesn't progress to another toy that there's anything wrong. or if your dog just sits there and smacks it with its foot, you just need to find a toy and some environmental enrichment games that are more suited for your particular dog and their play style. I like throwing food to get out of sticky situations. So when the dog sees someone they're not sure about, I throw food in the opposite direction so I can leave the situation if I need to. Bear with me. I throw food, so leave the situation if I need to without the dogs becoming more stressed. I find that they become way more confident. Alicia, absolutely knowing your two dogs as well. This can certainly work in regards to counter conditioning. So counter conditioning, guys, is changing the perception, changing the mindset that our dogs experience. We cover this off to a degree in our food guarding, our resource guarding episode of K9TV, which is our first episode. So you can certainly scroll through and find that. And as I said earlier, we do post them to our YouTube channel. So once you jump on there, please subscribe, because that way you'll make sure that you certainly never miss one of our K9TV episodes also. But yeah, so counter conditioning, that can certainly work well. Depending on, what it is that you're working with your dog. Absolutely. Rodney, hi mate, how are you, Dale? Hope Carly, your German Shepherd's going really well. So guys, I have gone through, for those of you that have just joined us, I've gone through what a trust fund baby is in regards to our dogs. I've gone through, can we raise our expectations from our dogs? Are we taking things a little bit too much for granted? Guys, show me a thumbs up if your dog's like super smart and, you just sit there and go, the sky is the limit with your dog. So give me some thumbs up. I'd love to see, what you kind of think, and give me some feedback, because now I can start seeing them come through. If you're giving me a thumbs up, hi Preston, I can see that you've joined in here. If you're giving me those thumbs up that your dog is so smart, hey Taylor, how are you, Dale? What we need to do is raise that criteria, help them. We don't keep our kids in kindergarten. We continue to raise the expectation. We do it gradually. We set them up for success. That is what we want to do with our dogs too. So, guys, that's awesome. So these are just some of the suggestions that I've been going through. Natasha, my dear, hello. Food fetch is great. Also a great exercise to use with high and low food value foods together by throwing low value out and delivering high value on return. Absolutely helps with impulse control on the return. And shows highest rewards always when they come back to you. Super, absolutely. Depending, that raises a really interesting point, depending on your individual dog. So if you've got a dog that kind of likes to flip you the bird a little bit and take off, then certainly, tossing out a lower value food and you having the higher value food. So it's all about the value and your dog's perception. That is brilliant, and from what I understand, reading Natasha's comment there, it sounds like it's working really, really well. There are some people that will sit there and go, particularly if you've got a dog that may have very mild separation anxiety, that your dog just doesn't want to leave you. So in that situation, I would have a higher value food reward that I would toss away. And the sheer fact that your dog comes back to you might just be a pat and a cuddle, or you're just going to throw another piece of food. So, Natasha, that certainly brings in a great discussion. Rodney, what is the difference between high value and a low value food? And is a high value food mean that the dog likes the food more? Absolutely. So remember, guys, when we talk about food value, it is exactly the same for us as people. We all have a different value of food. I ask this question many a times, and the most common kind of response when I sit there and I say to people, what is your favorite food? Chocolate is the answer. And going by the cliche, most women will say chocolate and the men will say steak. And if we continue to ask more questions, I'll quite often sit there and I ask people, but what kind of what kind of chocolate? Dark chocolate? Milk chocolate? Carob chocolate? What is the chocolate that you prefer? Is it, to go with the brands Cadbury or Lindt? So you're always going to have a favorite food. I have done many a seminar where we talk about reward value, and to this day, unless you have insider trader knowledge, which you're about to all get, there has not been one seminar that I have run where people have been able to guess what my food value is. What is my absolute? Yep, I'll recall to you. I'll do what it is that you're asking me to do when it comes to obedience and things like that. Mexican. Every single time. I love Mexican food. It's not your chocolate, it's not junk food or that type of thing per se. I really like Mexican food. So when we talk about the value of food, the only person that can perceive what they find rewarding is your dog, and different dogs will find different foods rewarding. We were running class the other day and we were talking about a gorgeous Samoyed that used to come down to our training, Millie. And her owner used to always bring down frozen peas of all things, but Millie loved them and it worked really well. So it is completely up to your dog what your dog finds highly rewarding. So hopefully that's answered your question there, Rodney. Preston, thanks for joining, buddy. The dogs who are finding the exercise easy need the most help. If the dogs that are finding it are struggling, are getting all the help that the dog finds easy. Bear with me, just having it read through here. And before you know it, the dog that was finding it easy is so bored. Absolutely. So what we want to be doing there, so I was just reading through Preston's comments, and if I understand it correctly, it's just always raising the criteria. One of the examples that I give just quickly is if we have a young child and we give them a puzzle. So let's say it's a 4-piece puzzle and it's a fruit puzzle. You've got a banana, you've got an orange, and we'll go 3. You've got a banana, an apple, and an orange, and we'll call it a green apple here. For a 3-year-old or a 4-year-old, that might be a little bit more complex. But if you give it to a 10-year-old, 20, 30-year-old, etc., they're going to find that really easy. So just play with it. I always use the analogy of flirt around, see what your dog's really enjoying, what they're going to love, and look at those rewards as well. Because if your dog's not paying attention, you need to up the ante just that little bit potentially. Guys, the last little thing that I just wanted to kind of cover off with this one this evening is basically, give your dogs the opportunity to think. They are so smart. They are so good at problem solving. Dogs are being used for medical alert dogs nowadays. We've got a beautiful little Labrador that we're training up at the moment, Coda, for detection with type 1 diabetes. We've got dogs that sent out, cancerous cells. We've got environmental dogs that are, finding endangered species. We've got dogs that are, being used on missing persons cases. They're just phenomenal. So, guys, do your dogs a favor and see how you can spruce up their life that little bit. Have them work that little bit. Make it fun. Give them good games. They will absolutely love you for it. Thank you so much for joining in for another episode of K9TV. We'll see you next week for another episode. And until then, as I said, we will be posting this on YouTube. So please make sure you subscribe to that. I will be posting the link to the DIY dog toy. And we'll see you all next week. Stay safe, guys. Mwah. Bye-bye.